If there's one thing that Star Wars is known for, it's probably the epic fights. So much of the beauty behind these movies is in the creative, innovative designs and executions of these legendary battles. Some of them are space battles, like the Battle of Coruscant or the Battle of Scarif. Some of these are ground assaults, like the Battle of Kashyyyk and the Battle of Endor. And some of these are lightsaber duels, like Anakin vs. Obi-Wan or Vader vs. Luke. These are the battles that made Star Wars the franchise it is today, made it beloved by millions. But every rose has its thorn, and for every one of these battles that are awesome, there's a battle that stinks like milk after my roommate leaves it sitting out in the sun for a week and then throws it on me when I'm not expecting it.
Hey, watch this. Hey, Jedwerd.
Yo, what's up?
Ah!
Oh, he's gonna pay when I get my hands on him. But anyway, for every battle of Coruscant, there's a battle of Exegol. For every battle of Geonosis, there's a battle of Crate. And for every Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul, there's a Rey and Kylo Ren versus the Praetorian Guards in The Last Jedi. And that's the fight we'll be talking about today. This lightsaber battle has cemented itself in Star Wars history as one of the worst fights in the entire franchise. And today, we're gonna go over it from top to bottom and break down why that is. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, before we can get into the fight itself, we need to briefly discuss its background. I don't want to go too far back because The Last Jedi was such a bad movie that we could go back to the first frame if we wanted to and debug it from there, but that's a video for another time. Let's just look at the direct events leading up to the fight. Basically, Rey gets captured by Kylo Ren on board of Supreme Leader Snoke's ship, the Supremacy. The reason she's here in the first place is because she willingly gave herself up and surrendered because she's been like space Zoom calling Kylo Ren for a while now, and he was usually shirtless in those Zoom calls, so she decided that she wanted to go talk to him and admire those pectorals in person. I'm kinda kidding. The real reason that she went is because she thinks that if she goes and talks to him, she can turn him back to the light side. But to be fair, he was shirtless in that one intergalactic FaceTime, and that was kinda weird. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Kylo Ren then decides to bring Rey to appear in front of Supreme Leader Snoke, so that's what he does. Now, this is the first time that we've ever seen a live-action Snoke. In the last movie, he was just a hologram that was like 200 feet tall, and to this point, that's all we've seen of him in the entire sequel trilogy. But now he's sitting on a throne, and he looks like kind of a small guy. I mean, the throne dwarfs him, and he seems a little weak and scrawny. However, that's quickly proven to be untrue because right off the bat, he uses the Force to grab Rey and fling her around like a rag doll. I mean, without moving a muscle, he drags Rey upright across the floor. Clearly, this guy is powerful and not to be messed with. You know, call it a sixth sense, call it context clues, but something is telling me that this might just be our big bad guy for the trilogy. I mean, it would make perfect sense, because he got hyped up so much in The Force Awakens, and so far in this movie, he's been the leading villain. He's definitely menacing and scary enough to be a symbolic replacement for Palpatine, and look, now he's throwing Rey up in the air with ease and holding her there while he breaches her mind. There's no way that Snoke isn't going to be the big bad guy of the trilogy. It would make so much sense. And honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm kind of hyped to see how the rest of the trilogy is going to play. Oh, he's dead. Yeah, that is, wow. Well, I mean, that is a decision, I guess. Essentially, Kylo Ren tricks Snoke into not noticing that the lightsaber sitting right next to him on the throne was turning around to ignite directly into Snoke's body. And the way he did this was by mirroring his actions with his own lightsaber so that Snoke would think that Kylo was thinking about striking down Rey. It's really lucky for Kylo that Snoke just randomly decided to close his eyes and like watch the events unfold through the Force or something, because if his eyes had been open, then he would have seen the lightsaber freaking spinning 90 degrees to kill him. But to be honest, this is creative and it's a cool idea. The problem is that it was done to the one guy who it shouldn't have been done to. Within mere minutes of us meeting Snoke, seeing how powerful he is, and believing that he's gonna be the big bad guy, he's lying in two pieces on the floor. But now that Snoke's dead, I just wonder what the directors are gonna do in order to make sure there's a satisfying and logical bad guy to wrap all these movies up. Surely not something rash and unexpected like bringing Palpatine back or something. That'd be insane. That'd be. Oh my god! Oh, JJ, you son of a gun. But the killing of Snoke is actually related to a larger problem that Rian Johnson consistently has all throughout The Last Jedi. And that was the constant need to subvert audience expectations, or make sure that the thing you expect to happen does not happen. For example, you expect Luke to be excited to see his old lightsaber when Rey hands it to him, but instead he throws it over his shoulder and walks away. Or you expect Luke to go fight Kylo Ren in person on Crate, but instead he goes there as a Force ghost and kills himself off with the effort. Or in this case, you expect Snoke to be a central leading bad guy for the entire trilogy, but instead, within minutes of finally seeing him in person, he learns what King Solomon would have done to that baby in the Old Testament if the true mother hadn't stepped up. Solomon, what a freaking W king, absolute legend, titan of the Bible. I bet that given his wisdom, he'd know that only a small percentage of people watching this video are actually subscribed, and that I'd really appreciate it if the person watching this subscribed right now. Ah, good old Solomon. It's just too bad about the 700 wives and 300 concubines, but you know, what's a guy supposed to do? Anyway, subverting audience expectations can work really well in a movie if it's done right. Let me give you a perfect example. In Terminator 2 Judgment Day, when we first see Prime Arnold, we think he's gonna be a bad guy because that's what he was in the first movie. But then we suddenly learn that he's actually a good guy in this movie and that he's trying to help John Connor survive. It's a significant difference from the last movie, and it works really well because the twist fits into the larger narrative very cohesively. But the subversions in The Last Jedi are the exact opposites. In efforts to briefly surprise the audience for cheap shock value, what Ryan actually does is change things that directly hurt the plot, and that make it harder to come in later and continue telling the story. Like, yes, it is very surprising that you killed Snoke off that quick, right when we weren't expecting that. Well done, Ryan. I mean, applause all around, I guess. But now what are you gonna do for the main villain of the trilogy? I mean, it's like more than halfway over by now, and you killed off the only guy who had potential to be the big baddie in these last 3 movies. Long-term thinking much there, Ryan? I guess not. Anyway, that's the background of how we got to what you all actually came here for. One of, if not the worst lightsaber fights in Star Wars. But first, really quick before we get into that, can I just say that they did not do a good job with the continuity of the length of this lightsaber. Look, when it's right here, it's not even going past his wrist, but in literally the next shot, it's out at least a foot past his hand. I know it's a nitpick, but come on, that's such a random thing to mess up, right? I mean, it's not just me, is it? That's weird. After Rey catches the said lightsaber of varying lengths out of the air, she looks at Kylo Ren, and he looks at her, and they decide that it's time to air this John out. And just in time, because all the Praetorian Guards are now rushing to the center of the room to meet them in hand-to-hand combat. Whoa, wait a second. Why the frick would the Praetorian Guards do that? Their boss just got killed in front of them, right? I mean, that makes sense. So, wouldn't the next highest person up on the chain of command be, I don't know, their boss's apprentice? The guy standing right there? It doesn't make a ton of sense that they would just run up to try to kill Kylo Ren. I'm not saying they'd let him go or anything with like a pat on the back and a wave, but you think they'd, I don't know, have a conversation or something. Like, from their point of view, what happens here if they do kill Kylo Ren? Like, how now, Brown Cow? Who's in charge of this whole operation? I guess you could argue that they saw their boss get killed and figured they should probably go try to look busy avenging his death, but were they really that loyal to Snoke? I don't get the impression they were. I don't know, it just seems like the motivations of them in this scene are so skewed. Maybe it's just me, maybe I'm misreading the situation, but that's just how I feel. Regardless, let's move on to the one thing everyone knows this scene is infamously bad for. It's fighting choreography. Now, in all of Star Wars, there's a lot of moments in a lot of these duels that don't make a whole lot of sense. Sometimes characters will miss easy hits. Sometimes they'll do dramatic gymnastics instead of striking at an opening. And sometimes they'll just give their opponents a minute to rest when they should just keep pushing in. But usually, those moments aren't every second of a duel. Usually, most of the duel is visually pleasing and satisfying, with only occasional moments of skepticism. And usually, the choreography in those duels are well planned and intricate, but not in this duel. When I tell you that this duel is the opposite of everything I just mentioned, it is the literal opposite of everything I just mentioned. Almost none of the duel is visually pleasing or satisfying. Every moment of it makes no sense if you pay even a little bit of attention. And the choreography in this duel makes me want to drive my car into the highway median at dangerous speeds. It's genuinely awful. It's just terrible. Now, I'm not going to break down the duel frame by frame. There are a lot of channels who've already done that and done it a heck of a lot better than I could. But I am going to generalize a few crucial issues with some poignant examples. First of all, the Praetorian Guards have got to be up there as the least effective fighters of all time. As soon as one of them rushes in, all the others back off and just sit there doing some elaborate pointless spins in the background, and watch the one guy that ran in get absolutely cut up like a stuffed teddy bear filled with cocaine. And then once that guy's dead, it's time for another one to rush in, and then another one, and the process just repeats and repeats until they're all dead. When they fight as individuals, they are completely incompetent. And then when they fight as a group, they are also completely incompetent. I mean, what exactly is their element? When do they have the advantage? Do they ever thrive in this situation? I mean, obviously not. That one guard right there has got a lightsaber through his chest, and it's been there for like 2 seconds. But that leads me right to my second point. The choreography in this scene gives Rey and Kylo the most plot armor I have ever seen 2 characters have. And yes, I do understand that it's Star Wars. In most of these duels, there is some level of plot armor that all of the characters get. I understand that, and I accept that. But almost every single guard in this duel misses an easy shot or doesn't take advantage of an opportunity to kill Kylo and Rey that was right in front of them. Every single one. For example, both of these guards right here decide to spin away uselessly instead of just slicing Kylo in the back. And this guard decides that even though he's completely uninjured and his sword hand is free and all of Kylo's body is exposed to him, he's just gonna let Kylo grab his head and throw him into this other guy instead of swinging at him. You have to bend over backwards upside down to explain how Rey and Kylo don't die multiple times here. Don't forget that time in the beginning when Rey does one kick and 3 Praetorian Guards standing in different places all go flying backwards. And then of course there's the disappearing knife. When Rey is fighting the only guard who ever gave her a challenge for more than 2 seconds, he has 2 knives he's fighting her with. And he gets her into a lock with the knife slowly moving towards her throat. But then, out of nowhere, she drops her lightsaber and removes her sword arm, taking away the only thing preventing him from stabbing her, mind you. And all of a sudden, there's no dagger in his other hand. None at all. Where did it go? It was there a second ago. She then catches the lightsaber in her other hand, swings around, and turns him into dog food. The entire sequence makes no sense and requires an ungodly amount of suspension of disbelief. I will praise one part of this scene though. I do like it when Kylo Ren is getting choked out by the guard and Rey throws the lightsaber across the room to him and he catches it and he hits the guard, choking him with a millisecond ignition, smoothly burning a hole through his head. Credit where credit is due. That's a pretty cool moment. You gotta be able to acknowledge good things within the bad boys, criticize when it's appropriate, and praise when it's appropriate. Anyway, the final part of the scene that I think is worth talking about is what happens after the fight is over. All the Praetorian Guards are dead, and Rey asks Kylo to save the Resistance fleet, which is like very close to getting pulverized like a toilet in Taco Bell by the First Order. But Kylo's like, nah, that's cringe, why don't you just like, I don't know, let your friends die and rule the galaxy with me? Which, in my opinion, seems kind of absurd. I mean, these two characters have literally spent like one canonical hour in the same room as each other. They talked a little bit on Starkiller Base, they talked for like a combined 4 minutes on their intergalactic Discord calls, and now they've caused this whole mess in the span of like 20 minutes. And yet, Kylo still decides that Rey is just the perfect choice to rule the galaxy with him. And this isn't like a Luke Vader situation where they're related in some way that connects them. They're both basically just strangers. Now yes, I know they have some funky dyad in the Force or something that gives them a connection, but to me, that just seems like a frantic explanation for how these two characters have anything in common. I don't know, maybe I'm just being a hater, but I feel like these two characters just straight up wouldn't know each other as well as they do. Just some food for thought, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. It doesn't end up mattering though, because Rey rejects his offer by suddenly grabbing the Skywalker lightsaber with the Force and trying to pull it to her, only for Kylo Ren to grab it with the Force at the same time and try to pull it to him. And so here we are, two opposing sides pulling at the legacy of Star Wars itself, Anakin Skywalker's very own lightsaber. This lightsaber passed through 3 generations, from Anakin to Luke and now to Rey, 3 different eras of the Jedi, and it symbolizes the Skywalker saga as a— they just tore it in half. Wow, yeah, that is just— there is 2 pieces of that lightsaber now. Why am I not surprised? Why am I not surprised that Rian Johnson, the guy who hates Luke Skywalker, who hates the Jedi, the guy who hates everything Star Wars stands for, saw it fitting to tear apart the symbol of Star Wars' legacy. Rip it straight in half. Given the content of The Last Jedi as a movie, that actually completely checks out. I'd expect nothing less of Rian Johnson. That makes total sense looking back on it. Regardless, I would call this fight as a whole one of the worst lightsaber fights in all of Star Wars. From top to bottom, the whole thing is just a wreck. I don't know whether or not I'd call it the worst scene in all of The Last Jedi, but I did find the worst scene from every single Star Wars movie in this video right here, which you can go check out right now. It's a great video, I'm very proud of it, and I highly recommend it. Go check it out. Thanks for watching, have a good one, boys. See you later, bye.